At 6 p.m. on a Monday here in Korea, welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Let's start with the headlines. With just 2 days remaining before the National Assembly's regular session ends, lawmakers continue to be at odds over a handful of bills, which is holding up thousands of other pieces of legislation that have been on the back burner for months. At an event commemorating the 52nd Trade Day, President Ban Kimoon called on the trade sector to diversify export items and provide a greater role for SMEs to enhance Korea's overall competitiveness. Through a rare televised national address, U.S. President Barack Obama vows to destroy the threat of Islamic State. Excluding ground troop deployment, his forces will hold nothing back to accomplish this goal. Tonight at Korea's National Assembly, with just 2 days before the 100-day regular session ends this Wednesday, the rival parties still face difficulty reaching common ground over some controversial bills. And this could impact on thousands of other bills that for months have been gathering dust. Park Ji-won has our top story.
Some of the bills the two parties had earlier decided to pass during this regular session still face uncertainty in their parliamentary passage. The leaders of rival parties had agreed earlier this month to pass a set of bills within this regular session. These include the Counterterrorism Act, a bill on the protection of North Korea's human rights, and an act promoting the service industry. But the Counterterrorism Act is facing strong resistance from the opposition blocs over a planned extended role by the nation's intelligence agency, while the Service Industry Promotion Act is also facing hurdles, with opposition parties concerned over any possibilities of the privatization of the health service. Regarding the 5 labor reform-related bills the rival parties earlier agreed to pass at the next extraordinary session, the presidential office and the ruling party are pushing the opposition bloc to have the bills passed within this year. This is because although extraordinary sessions are expected to be held later this month and over later months, once the 100-day regular session ends this Wednesday, bipartisan negotiations over bills at the standing committee stage will not be easy, as most lawmakers plan to focus on their upcoming election campaigns. As of now, over 11,000 bills are pending at the Assembly. These will be automatically lost at the end of next May, when the new Assembly is formed with newly elected lawmakers from next April's general elections. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
And President Ban Kimoon is urging Parliament to approve a number of economy-related bills before the end of their regular session. On Monday, President Bak met with leaders from the ruling Saenuri party and stressed that a bill aimed at improving Korea's service industry sector needed to be passed as it holds the key to restructuring the local economy. She also pointed out that a pending anti-terrorism bill is crucial for public safety, but the main opposition stands against it, as the legislation would put the nation's top spy agency in control of counterterrorism. Their fear is the agency could abuse human rights under the guise of anti-terrorism operations. And the South Korean leader is calling for big improvements in the export market as well, as figures have been dented by slow global economic growth. While this year wasn't a total wash, the president made clear that changes were needed to get trade back on track. Kwon So-hwa has the details.
With Korea's exports and imports posting sluggish figures this year, it was no surprise that festivities were subdued at the 52nd Trade Day commemoration. President Park Geun-hye, who attended Monday's event, said slow global growth and stronger competition have made things tough.
독일, 미국 등의 제조업 혁신 정책, 불과 3.3년까지 좁혀진 중국과의 기술 격차로 중장기적 무역 여건도 쉽지 않은 상황입니다.
A year ago, participants of the 51st Trade Day were all smiles as Korea's 2014 trade volume exceeded the $1 trillion mark in the shortest span ever. But this year, and for the first time since 2011, Korea is expected to miss the target. So it raises the question, will exports still be the main driving force of Korea's economy? That's why President Park is calling on Korea's trade industry to diversify its export items, expand the role of small and mid-sized firms, and improve its competitiveness in main export sectors.
The FTAs with China, Vietnam and New Zealand are expected to take effect by the end of this year after very strenuous processes. I hope that the trade pacts will act like a vitamin to boost the export market next year.
But experts say it'll take some time before benefits really show.
There are especially high expectations for the Korea-China FTA, but in that case, trade liberalization isn't that high, and tariff eliminations are processed very slow, meaning the effects aren't likely to show up drastically next year.
Despite negative growth in outbound shipments every month this year, President Park pointed out that some significant achievements were made. Korea was ranked the 6th biggest exporter in the world, up a spot from last year, and was able to expand its market share in the world's 2 biggest economies, the US and China, while exports by SMEs continued its rising streak. 권소아, Arirang News.
5 South Koreans have made the cut to be included in Bloomberg's top 400 billionaires list. What's noteworthy is that the combined wealth of those South Koreans exceeds the GDP of a communist state north of the border. Kim Min-ji tells us more.
South Korea's 5 richest people have more money than North Korea's GDP. According to Bloomberg's Billionaires Index, 5 South Koreans made the list of the world's 400 richest people. They are Samsung Group Chairman Lee Gun-hee, Amore Pacific Chairman Seo Kyung-bae, Samsung Electronics Vice Chairman Lee Jae-yong, Hyundai Motor Group Chairman Chung Mong-gu, and SK Group Chairman Choi Tae-won. Combined, their assets make up $36.4 billion. According to Statistics Korea data, that's more than 18% higher than the GDP of North Korea, which stood at just over $29 billion last year. These 5 make up almost 3% of the South Korean economy. To give the figure some context, Korea's richest person, Lee Gun-hee's wealth stood at $11.9 billion. That means he could buy 30,000 Ferrari 458 Spiders. The world's richest was none other than Bill Gates, the co-founder of Microsoft, whose assets stood at $83.4 billion. Owner of Inditex, a Spanish company that owns fashion brand Zara, Amancio Ortega ranks second, followed by Warren Buffett of Berkshire Hathaway. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Since coming to power in the late 2012 after the death of his father, Kim Jong-il, North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un has continually sought to consolidate his power. One of the young leader's methods is to instill fear among his inner circle by purging and executing close aides. Our Connie Kim delves into the effectiveness of his methods and how he is seeking to stabilize the regime.
On December 13, 2013, North Korea announced that Kim Jong-un's uncle, Jang Song-thaek, who was then regarded as the 2nd most influential man in North Korea, had been executed. Experts say Chang's removal successfully consolidated Kim's position after taking power in late 2012.
Back then, Kim's execution of Jang Song-thaek was an extreme method to take control of the regime for 20, 30 years. It was also to prevent any potential uprising against him.
The North Korean leader's elimination of his top aides continues. He had Hyun Young-chul, the country's defense chief, executed in April, and recently sent another of the nation's core elite, Workers' Party Secretary Choi Dong-hae, to a rural collective camp for so-called re-education. The Seoul-based Institute for National Security Strategy believes nearly 100 high-ranking North Korean officials have been executed since Kim took power some 3 years ago. That's 10 times more than his father, Kim Jong-il, had executed during the first 4 years of his rule. Some experts say that while Kim Jong-un's use of fear politics could generate backlash among officials, North Korean citizens' support for the young leader could contribute in stabilizing the regime.
Kim Jong-un is trying to win the minds of his people by boosting the regime's economy. Support among his people is the most important issue for Kim.
And this is why analysts believe Kim will focus on helping its people live in better economic conditions, possibly making it one of the key agenda items at the ruling Workers' Party's biggest Congress in May. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
South Korea and the UN kicked off a 2-day joint conference on disarmament and non-proliferation issues on Monday in Seoul. In a video message to the conference, UN Secretary General Ban Kimoon called for a global crackdown on weapons of mass destruction. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
Through a video message on Monday, UN Secretary General Ban Kimoon called for greater efforts to remove all nuclear weapons from the world, that it is now the time to rid the world of these most destructive weapons. Ban added that the forum's agenda includes North Korea's nuclear weapons program and the implications of the nuclear deals signed by Iran and the global powers. He stressed that progress in these areas is vital to regional and global security. Seoul's Foreign Affairs Deputy Minister Shin Dong-ik says that over 98% of declared chemical weapons stockpiles in the world have been destroyed, but that over 16,000 remain, continuing to pose an existential threat to humanity. Shin also condemned Pyongyang for conducting 2 submarine-launched ballistic missile tests, calling them violations of UN Security Council resolutions. Last month, there was speculation that Ban was planning to visit the North, turning everyone's attention to his possible holding talks with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un to better reduce tensions on the Korean peninsula. However, the UN's acting representative for disarmament, Kim Won-soo, told reporters on the conference sidelines that nothing has been confirmed and that the talks are ongoing. Ban has repeatedly said he will do everything possible for inter-Korean conciliation and resolving the North Korean nuclear issue. Should Ban visit the North, he will become the 3rd UN Secretary General to do so. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Turning over to the United States, President Barack Obama gave a rare televised national address from the Oval Office on Sunday night local time, setting out his plans on dealing with the threat of Islamic State. This comes after a radicalized Muslim couple killed 14 people in a mass shooting in California last week. Kwon Jang-ho brings us the details.
Underlining the gravity of the nation's concern following last week's mass shooting in San Bernardino, President Barack Obama addressed the nation from the Oval Office for only the 3rd time since taking office. He began by acknowledging that the shootings were an act of terrorism, but that so far there has been no evidence of overseas influence or of a larger cell in the U.S.
The threat from terrorism is real, but we will overcome it. We will destroy ISIL and any other organization that tries to harm us.
The president went on to lay out his plans for defeating ISIS, including continued use of airstrikes, providing assistance to local forces, and working with international allies on military action and intelligence. But he ruled out deploying ground troops to fight ISIS in Syria or Iraq.
But they also know that if we occupy foreign lands, they can maintain insurgencies for years, killing thousands of our troops, draining our resources, and using our presence to draw new recruits.
He also called on Congress to address issues on gun control.
Congress should act to make sure no one on a no-fly list is able to buy a gun. We also need to make it harder for people to buy powerful assault weapons, like the ones that were used in San Bernardino.
Republican presidential candidates were quick to criticize Obama on social media. They rebuked the speech as disappointing and lacking a clear or new strategy. Last week's shooting, along with the terror attacks in Paris last month, has shaken the US. A recent CNN poll showed that the majority of Americans felt the nation's military response to the terrorist groups has not been aggressive enough, and that now over 50% support sending ground troops to Syria and Iraq to fight ISIS. Whether today's speech is enough to reassure these people remains to be seen. Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories, despite steadier conditions in the global financial market in the 4th quarter, emerging markets may suffer from an expected U.S. rate hike later this month. In its latest quarterly report, the Bank for International Settlements, or BIS, notes that due to weaker financial market conditions and increased sensitivity to U.S. interest rates, a rate hike will likely have negative impact on emerging markets. The BIS explained further dollar appreciation may fuel rising debt levels in markets that borrowed heavily in U.S. dollars, posing increased risks to their financial stability, adding such appreciation and increasing yields could hinder growth and inflation in some countries. Shifting gears now, we are approaching the end of the year, and that usually means it's time for some of 2015's biggest blockbusters to hit cinemas here in Korea. For a rundown of the movies to watch out for this month, we turn to our Kim Ji-yeon.
There are a lot of movies to look out for this winter. One of them is The Tiger, which centers around the Joseon dynasty's last tiger and the best gunman of the times, played by star actor Choi Min-sik. The movie cost nearly $15 million to make, most of which went into refining the computer graphics to make the tiger look as realistic as possible.
I really liked the showdown between those who tried to preserve nature and those who wanted to destroy it for their own greed.
Another star of Korea's silver screen is Hwang Jung-min, who is starring in the upcoming film The Himalayas. It's a story about an expedition team that tries to recover their fallen colleague from the mountain range. Parts of the movie were actually filmed in the Himalayas, meaning production didn't come cheap.
I always think people power is the most important source of energy in a mountain. That's what I felt when I read the scripts and while shooting in the Himalayas.
The Magician is ready to draw in moviegoers at the end of the year. It stars Yoo Seung-ho, who's sure to win the hearts of female audiences. The movie plot centers around love and confrontation between top magicians during the Joseon dynasty. On the Hollywood scene, legendary actor Harrison Ford joins a mix of old and new stars in the highly anticipated release of Star Wars: The Force Awakens.
There's a high chance The Tiger and the Himalayas will be big hits in the box office this winter, as Korean movies have regained traction. It'll be a fight between Korean movies against the Star Wars movie.
Korean movies Assassination and Veteran both attracted more than 10 million viewers this summer. Kim Jeon, Arirang News.
And that's all from us. Thank you for watching. Do tune in for more at 10 p.m. Korea time.